mentioned this really important piece of helping students strategize. So now we'll take a look at an important tool to support students in identifying places for improvement and discuss some principles for giving constructive feedback with this tool. And so first we'll show you the tool, and then we'll have you use it a little in practice so you get a sense of what it is. And then we'll actually talk to a student and instructor who use the tool in practice. And then you'll get a chance to use the tool a little bit to give feedback of your own. So here's the actual tool. And what you can see is that there's a descriptive list of some of the skills that are really important to doing science. Skills like collaboration and communication. And then there's some questions you can ask yourself about how you're doing with respect to these skills. And then you can place yourself on a scale from beginning to succeeding. So now let's zoom in on two more particular elements of the rubric: mental resourcefulness and persistence. And so let's start out with persistence. We see that the tool actually has some questions we can ask ourselves about persistence. First, what do you do when you feel frustrated, and do you independently pursue understanding? And then there's a scale from beginning to succeeding, and you might place yourself at the beginning part of the scale if you say that I tend to try one or two things and I give up more easily than I should. Whereas you might be more at the succeeding level if you look for new ways to think about the problem and find ways to persist. And so now moving on to mental resourcefulness and zooming in there, there's also some questions that the tool encourages you to think about. The first question is, where do you turn for new ideas? And do you look for connections between ideas? Or do you apply past experiences to new situations? Because these are really important things. Now, take a moment to look over this rubric and pick one skill to journal on yourself with respect to either a STEM course you're taking or a research project you're working on. So now we'll hear about an instructor and student who used this tool in practice. The tool is often referred to as the science skills rubric or just the rubric. They'll be discussing a 2-credit course at the University of California, Berkeley that was on the side of traditional instruction. So students journaled weekly using the rubric, and they journaled with respect to a traditional math or physics course that they were taking at the time. Then the instructor, a graduate student, gave them feedback every week. So Jenna is a student who took this course, and she's going to talk a little about her experience early on in college and the role of the rubric in supporting her improvement.
My name is Jenna, and I am finishing up a physics major at UC Berkeley.
My name is Joel Corbo. I'm a postdoctoral researcher, and I've done a lot of work on designing curricula and courses to help students make a good transition from high school into their physics majors.
When you get to college, like the methods you used in high school that always worked don't work anymore. And you really have to sit and evaluate, like, okay, now how do I learn to be a student? Because I never had to learn that before.
The rubrics were tied to a specific learning goal that was on the syllabus for this course. So the goal was to reflect on and modify factors outside of the classroom that impact our success. And the rubrics are a tool specifically for doing that thing. So while the idea of growth mindset wasn't explicit in the syllabus, it definitely informed the decision to include the rubrics as part of the course, because ideally by practicing using the rubric, the students would be able to grow their skills in these areas and see that growth, and hopefully that would carry over into other aspects of what they do in the classroom.
And having the rubrics really help, especially since when they gave us the rubrics, it wasn't some vague, like, let's improve ourselves kind of thing. It's like, these are concrete things you can work on, pick one or two, and do them. And so that really gave me an opportunity to focus on, like, okay, I'm not performing academically as I'd like to, and here's just a list of things that I can work on, and hey, you know, persistence and mental resourcefulness, that kind of resonates with me because I give up really easily on problems because I'm not used to being wrong all the time. So the journals held you accountable to coming up with a solution to the issues you identified with the rubric, and not just executing them, but continuing to execute them over the whole semester.
So for me, the two most important components of the feedback that I provided to the students' reflections was, one, making sure that I provided some anecdote, if I could, from my own experience, or that would normalize whatever experiences they were having, so that they realized that if there was some negative situation that they were going through, that it was not just them, and that it's something that comes up for many people. And then the other thing that I thought was important was to provide some concrete piece of advice related to whatever it is they were reflecting on, because after all, you know, as a grad student at the time when I was doing this, I had a lot more experience in college than they did. And so I should be able to use that wisdom and experience to help them.
And the feedback you got on the journals that we submitted was helpful, because it could help, it could really help you come up with ideas that you maybe hadn't thought of, because I'm sure there were like times where I was like, yeah, they think this would be a good idea, and woohoo, and they'd be like, yeah, this is a good idea, and here's like a way to elaborate on it, like, have you thought of this, that, and the other thing? And you'd be like, no, I did not think of that, but now I have, and now I'm gonna go do that.
So Joelle highlighted two really important parts of giving feedback, the first being normalizing struggle, and the second being giving a concrete suggestion for improvement. So here we have an actual student journal entry, and as you look over it, think about Joelle's advice of the two types of things we might do to give feedback. First, normalizing struggle, and second, giving concrete suggestions. So now we've seen one way that the rubric was used in a particular course, and there's many different types of ways that you might bring the rubric into your instruction. I've talked to colleagues who thought it would be nice to use in office hours when they're advising students who've done poorly on exams. I also talked to a colleague recently who liked the idea of bringing the tool into his classroom for the first 5 minutes of every class. And his idea was that he would actually journal a little on the rubrics himself and bring in to this class whatever he was struggling with that week, and then ask students to share a little bit about what they were struggling with so that everyone could strategize together with some of these skills that are really important to doing science. So both of these ideas I think are really great, and there's a number of ways that you could use the rubric in your own instruction.